with us now, former National Security Advisor Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who is also author of the new book, America and the World, co-written with Brent Scowcroft, moderated by David Ignatius. Dr. Brzezinski, Dad, welcome. How are you?
Mika,
all right,
good to be with you again.
Talk to us about, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to break my rules.
Good.
I'm asking a question. Just now, I'll just throw out the softball. Is the Powell endorsement a game changer, or what is it? What is it symbolically at this point in history?
I think it's significant. It was a very eloquent endorsement. In some respects, it was a very moving endorsement. To me, one of the most poignant moments in an endorsement was when Powell pointed out correctly that Obama is a Christian, not a Muslim, but that one should never object to the idea of a Muslim being the President of the United States, given what America is. I thought that was powerful and significant. But to me, the electoral aspects I cannot judge, but the post-electoral aspects, if Obama wins, are significant. First of all, it clearly endorses Obama as commander-in-chief in a way that cannot be even challenged. Secondly, it provides backing for Obama's decisions regarding Iraq, the date, the withdrawal, and all of that. And thirdly, it reinforces what one expects from Obama, namely that it will be a bipartisan administration. And that's very important.
And Joe, my dad's first point about the Muslim Americans and the impact of some of the really tough talk during this campaign on Muslim Americans is something you brought up on the show earlier, that there's been not an insult on the issue of race, but an insult in terms of African Americans, but an insult to Muslims from what we've seen in the media.
Yeah, I've just wondered what a parent who has a son named Hussein in America in 2008 must be thinking about this election, with actually both sides running away from that name and from Muslim heritage. It is disturbing. Dr. Brzezinski, let me ask you not only about what the endorsement says about Barack Obama, but what Powell's endorsement says about John McCain and Sarah Palin. What's your take?
Well, I think it goes beyond McCain and Palin. I think, in a sense, implicit in that endorsement and the reference to Obama being transformational is the notion, at least I interpret it so, that we are in a deep crisis, that this country is facing a real crisis of its leadership. It's been discredited morally. It's been weakened and isolated politically. It's been militarily overstretched. And now it has plunged into a financial and economic crisis, largely of its own making, or at least of the parties in power making. And that we need to pull together. And that we need to have a nation that responds in a way that regains its standing in the world and really addresses some fundamental domestic issues. Most important of which, to me at least, is to make our capitalistic system again credible, trustworthy, that the people don't feel that it is a system based on deception and cheating and money-making for oneself, forgetting the commonweal. And I'm afraid we have slid that way. We don't need to mention names. We know who they are. Some of them are even in the government, walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, that kind of economic system in which you don't know how people make their money, but you know it's mysterious and deceptive, is a system that's not going to enjoy public support in a democracy.
Now, part of the criticism of Sarah Palin has been her lack of experience. Does Barack Obama have the experience to be commander-in-chief?
Well, Powell has certified that he does, and that speaks more loudly than if I say that he does. I think he does. I endorsed him more than a year ago. But beyond that, I think what is important is that Powell has pointed his finger at something very important, namely that Obama has developed a transformational presidential campaign. He has generated a degree of support that cuts across generations and racial lines, and he has done it with enormous skill. Look at the scale of that campaign and compare its performance to the performance of the other side.
I want to follow up, though, on experience, though, because Barack Obama is running to be commander-in-chief to lead our foreign policy. You would have never selected someone with Barack Obama's resume as your number 2 person at the NSA. In fact, your number 2 person at the NSA had 15 years of Foreign Service experience before they came to work with you in the White House. And yet Barack Obama, community organizer, state legislator, and a guy that worked in the Senate for a year before running for president.
Well, the president can always find experience and hire it. That's what presidents are for. But they have to have good judgment, and they have to have a sense of where things are heading historically. And I think Obama has demonstrated that. Don't forget that the decision to go to war in Iraq was made by some people with 30 years of experience. Let me just name 2. The Vice President, Mr. Cheney, the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Rumsfeld, both of whom overshadowed the president in their experience. We'll look at the decision's consequences.
But don't we want to have people that have experience and also good judgment? It's not an either-or. Just because Dick Cheney made mistakes doesn't mean we don't want somebody like you having the president's ear.
Look, in the ideal world, you'll want to have some divine figure as president. But the point is, the sense of good judgment and the understanding of historical direction is what makes Obama different from his counterpart on the other political side. And that is, I think, quite decisive. This country is in deep, deep trouble, domestically and internationally. It needs a grand renewal, and not more of the same, from a person who is very tired and who is rooted in the past and is assisted by someone who comes from Alaska and tells us that she's qualified to deal with foreign affairs because she can look across the horizon, across the sea, and sees Russia there. And she thinks that qualifies her to be president.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty important.
Lawrence O'Donnell has a question.
Dr. Brzezinski, Colin Powell did have to face the question of, are you endorsing him just because he's black? The question to you is, have you endorsed him just because he has a very unusual sounding name, much like what?
Well, he has my sympathy. But you know, it's something that I faced years ago when I was just beginning to sort of make a little bit of a name for myself when I was at Harvard. And I said to myself, should I simplify my name? Should I maybe anglicize it? And then I said to myself, no, America is a country in which someone with a name like mine should be able to make a name for himself. And no Barack joke has done it.
Except in show business, where you absolutely...
Right.
No, but Lauren, no joke. One of my first news directors said, your name, maybe it ought to be, Mary Smith. Like, seriously?
I think actually Schwarzenegger paved the way for you.
I think it might have. But go ahead, Lawrence. Any more? I'm out of
material.
Willie, take it away.
Dr. Brzezinski, you said a couple months ago, I think it was, that a McCain administration has the potential to lead to a world war of some kind. What did you mean specifically by that?
I didn't say that. I said there's a potential he would widen the war.
Right. What frightens you about the prospect of a McCain administration?
It's essential unpredictability. His style of decision-making, as we have seen in the campaign, is unpredictable. It kind of lacks a larger sense of direction, constancy. So we have a potential president who veers dramatically, assisted by a vice president who really, doesn't know anything. And that's not a very good combination for a country, which I want to emphasize again. We are in deep, deep historic crisis, domestically and internationally. We are not even able to lead. Look at the reaction to the financial crisis. Our first instinct was simply to bail out those who produced the crisis. We waited for the British to take the stand on the banks, and we're now following them. And we waited for the French to come up with an initiative for a global summit to recognize the fact that this is the era of interdependence. We're in a crisis, but this crisis has plunged the world in a crisis, and they're in a crisis too. And we have to work together. Neither initiative, both fundamental initiatives, which we have now adopted, came from us. Now, doesn't that tell you something about the quality of our leadership and the state we're in?
Okay, on that note, good morning, everyone. We are in deep crisis. Dad, thanks a lot, I think, for waking up the viewers. I'm kind of depressed, actually. Dr. Brzezinski, thank you very much. His book, though, an important book to read, America and the World, co-written with Brent Scowcroft. Thank you very much for coming on the show once again, Dad.